again. Today I'll be talking about 3 papers outlining the increased eutrophication of Lake Winnipeg, and as well expanding on the topic as a consequence of climate change affecting the region. Lake Winnipeg is a massive water body connected to the Red River and is critical to Manitoba as one of the largest reservoirs of fresh water in Canada, while also being a hub of hydroelectric power generation, tourism, commercial and sport fishing, and simple recreation. More than 50,000 people also live within the lake system, comprising about 40 different communities, all dependent on the consistency and value of the water. Over time, there have been excursions of algal blooms occurring along beaches as massive green-blue slops with advisories away from the water as the bloom persists. And as more research has come out, it's been found that anthropogenic forcing has been a primary amplifier as well as the climate change itself. Why the blooms could be the result of humans simply lies in how increasing the concentration of phosphorus and nitrogen in large bodies of water can become problematic. When excess nutrients are loaded into the lake, it promotes the growth of cyanobacteria and phytoplanktons, which, as single-celled organisms, reproduce incredibly quickly and are capable of persisting long enough to blanket large portions of the water and risk starving and or suffocating any aquatic life within solely as just this huge mass of organisms. They continue sapping nutrients from the water, while oxygen depletion can make it impossible for some fish to exist in certain portions of the water. They then block sunlight from reaching photosynthetic plants, killing them as well. Even further is that cyanobacteria can produce toxic microcystins as well, which are cyanotoxins that can further harm both aquatic animals and humans, leading to the health advisories present when blooms are in effect. Another paper was written, though, by Kling et al. In 2011 outlining bloom successions in Lake Winnipeg, and found that eutrophic diatom taxa were most prominent in the spring months, while summer months yielded reduced taxonomic diversity and a surge in cyanobacteria development. Diatoms are another form of algae indicative of water quality and have been used as markers for potential algal bloom rises when nutrients become too prevalent. Further is that toxic microcystin-releasing cyanobacteria seem to preferentially concentrate in the near-shore regions of the lake. While all of this certainly is a legitimate problem in the area, beyond it simply being a nuisance classified occurrence, can be a critical problem for any communities reliant on both the fresh water itself as well as the fish, potentially cutting them off hundreds of people's primary food source. Regardless of any current legislature or efforts to regulate farming and control the spread of the blooms, there is still the gravely significant forcing of Lake Winnipeg's trophic state into that of a petri dish of algae and what was mentioned earlier, the climate. Since the mid-1990s, a study by Schindler et al. In 2012 found that nuisance blooms in Lake Winnipeg have nearly doubled in size and are the result of 2 factors: increased anthropogenic forcing of phosphorus and nitrogen, and an increase in both the rate and intensity of summer floods, moving water out of the watersheds and depositing the nutrients into the lake. Knowing that increased agricultural and urban development has directly accelerated the rate of phosphorus loading into the lake, we can infer what we already know to expect of climate change up to 2011 as related to Lake Winnipeg itself. As the earth warms and more land is eroded and acidified, less total farmland and fertile soil will be available to grow crops, and thus with an extremely high population, and growing if still increasing by 2050 to 2100 and beyond, more artificial fertilizers need to be used to sustain the farming. Coupled with rising sea levels and increased extreme weather events like massive rainfall and flooding, we could reasonably expect these nutrients to be carried away even more consistently towards the lake and further promote nuisance growth, especially with warmer temperatures overall. Even throughout North America, as areas in the United States become agriculturally useless due to desertification and soil degradation continues to increase, more stress will be placed onto Canada and the prairie provinces to provide in the food gap. This still will provide further incite nutrient loading into the lake and continue to deprive locals of their resources for the sake of other resources. This rapid shift in the trophicity of the lake coincides with reports dating back to the 1920s and the 1970s, with the Red River yielding far less nutrients than it had when it was pristine. The cause was determined to be due to the long grass prairies, which had been converted to agricultural farmland in the decades to come, forcing vast amounts of waste material downstream and towards Lake Winnipeg. Again, though, with more stress being placed onto places like Manitoba to aid in food production, there will undoubtedly be more places like Lake Winnipeg affected by eutrophication as both nutrient loading and climate change continue accelerating in unison. While the Manitoba government has begun initiatives to assess and provide solutions and mitigation to the blooms, it is still likely that Lake Winnipeg will always have problems with growth unless measures are taken to either filter out the phosphorus and nitrogen materials directly or reroute the waste to other locations. Species will also continue to be disrupted from climate change through altered migratory schedules and reproductive rates, or fish being affected through water acidification as more carbon dioxide enters the atmosphere and returns to the surface as bicarbonate or carbonic acid, further harming aquatic species as blooms starve them of oxygen and warmth. Before that happens, though, we can still contact legal authorities to request further updates or place more pressure on them to act. The further eutrophication of Lake Winnipeg will have devastating consequences on the region if allowed to develop unchecked, and has done so as a result of human activities for almost a century now. Any amount of loss in the aquatic or land biodiversity as a result is something that will be felt by all who live near the lake, though further science and understanding of what is going on will allow us to fight it much more effectively. Thank you.